My name is Dupon from the Institute of Games, and we created Streets of My Town. It's a game that connects players to local support services when they need it. But let's have a look at the trailer first.
Yeah, I block every day, every day. Now we in the game like EA. Said that it ain't that easy. But we keeping it 100 like a freeway. Don't need a tick, just do it. You know that you're linking with a moment. Say what they want, see how they feel. We gon' let it slide, move on up, Curtis Mayfield. On the rain, and we can't get enough. You know that I'm hollering love, hollering love. And I know I get tough, so let me hear you holler. On the rain, and we can't get enough. You know that I'm hollering love, hollering love. And I know it get tough, so let me hear you holler. I'm hollering love, let me hear you holler. I'm hollering love, let me hear you holler.
Hey, we're on the streets of my town in Melbourne, Australia. The kids around here will know these streets inside out. They will know where the school is, they will know where the shops are, they will know where their mates live. But do they know where to find professional help when they need it? Do they know where the local support services are that will help them when things get tough? Well, I have a background in youth work, and as a youth worker, I want to work with young people before it gets bad. The earlier I get to work with a young person, the better the results will be. But young people consistently tell us that they didn't even know we existed. And even if they did know about us, they were hesitant to reach out. I want to break down those barriers of reaching out for help. I want to smash that stigma and empower young people to reach out for help earlier. Game design turns out to be ideally suited to solve this problem. Not only can I give the right information to the player, but the player can also experience what help seeking will be like. What will the youth worker or the social worker say? How will they treat me? What can you expect when you call a support service? A game allows the player to experiment without fear of being judged. The service system is quite fragmented. A housing service in the one town can be completely different to a housing service in the next. So to make this successful, I needed the game to be specific to the area that the player lives in. I wanted the information to be relevant to the player and immediately applicable. So my first challenge was to create a world that resembles the real world, so the player can understand that there is a connection between the service in the game and the services that are out there in the real world.
Hi, my name's Michael, the art director of Streets of My Town. When Stephen told me about his ambitious social impact game, I was interested straight away. And I quickly got to collecting all my favourite inspirations, such as from children's books, Australian paintings, and most importantly, looking at some of my favourite games. A few big influences in the early stages of the project were Knights and Bikes by Foam Sword, and the children's books by Melbourne artist and author Sean Tan. I describe the Streets of My Town art style as a huge collage of quirky little drawings, and these drawings are inspired by interesting objects, buildings and characters that populate the Australian suburban landscape. Growing up in suburban Sydney myself, I already had a lot of interesting ideas in my memory, like my cheeky next door neighbour who owned the fish and chip shop up the road. When I created each drawing, I looked for interesting features and exaggerated them or drew them slightly kind of wonky to highlight the visual characteristics that make that object unique. If I could, I would take advantage of breaking objects into lots of small parts so they could later be combined in Unity, the game engine, to create greater variation within the environment. A good example of this modularity use are the suburban houses you'll see in the streets in the game. Doors, roofs and windows and even downpipes were broken off into individual parts and sewed back together to make all the different houses you see in the game. Each character you meet in the game, I tried to give a unique visual personality, pulling from the rainbow of interesting people that we all meet on our own streets. And then to tie all these characters and objects and all the art together, I used an Australian colour palette and painted every object with the same brush in Photoshop. And this gave every drawing the same kind of signature and helped them all sit nicely together in Unity. The game Streets of My Town is a 2.5D game, which is made up of 2D sprites laid out along a 3D plane. And then as you move around the streets, the space has a 3D feeling, even though it's just made up of 2D objects. And then when it came to bringing some life to the game and animating objects, we took a very simplistic approach of drawing just a few frames for each animated object, and then kind of flipped through those frames like a flip book, and it kind of gave that little bit of quirky movement that you'd see in kind of a sketchy animation, and it was kind of fitting nicely with our art style. In the future, as we create new versions for different communities, I try to look into what makes their world visually unique, such as important landmarks or buildings. And I apply the same thinking that I have for the previous game, with the hope that the player feels like they are playing in their very own streets.
So now that we have a system to build out these real-world areas in-game, it was time to move on to stories. Every region, every town, every culture has their own specific and unique stories to tell. And I wanted to be able to tell those. I needed a system in my game that will allow me to customize the storylines and customize the dialogues really quickly and easily.
Hi, I'm Milan on Votrubec. I'm the developer for the Streets of My Town project, and I thank you for allowing me to talk about the technical aspects of the game. We needed a way for designers and storytellers to be able to deliver rich and engaging content, but given our small team size, we had to work out how to best achieve that. That's why we set our sights on the Unity timeline. By extending and customizing the Unity timeline, we were able to create custom character scripts that would allow unlimited dialogue options. Best of all, this was done using the visual aspects of the Unity editor. That meant that our designers and storytellers weren't reliant on learning third-party tools or custom scripts. We're not stopping there though. We're constantly thinking of ways to expand the system to deliver an even richer experience for the children. We're extremely proud of what we built, and we can't wait to unveil the new features that we have in store for the future. Thank you.
So now we have art, code and design. It's time to build. Every version we make is made in co-design with the community that we build it for. Our first version was done for a local government youth service to introduce the local services, programs and events that are run in that area. The game has some really cool features to help you keep the stories interactive and engaging. Here you see our in-game phone. The phone allows you to send and receive messages to the characters. It's a different way of telling our stories. There's a map that lets you move around the world quickly. We have a backpack to collect items in the world and give them to the characters. And we have a bunch of animated, quirky items to play with. We also built in an evaluation system. This will allow you to track whether the game is achieving its outcomes. Now, we are fortunate to be building out 2 new versions of Streets of My Town. One is with the Centre for Multicultural Youth and the South Sudanese community that lives in Melbourne. And we want to make a game that empowers young people to be able to make safe decisions around their health and well-being. We also have a partnership with the Dandenong District Aborigines Cooperative to make a game about Indigenous people and living with COVID and all the decisions that surround living with COVID. We're super proud that Streets of My Town has been nominated as a finalist in the Australian Game Development Awards 2021. And we were also featured at the Tokyo Game Show as a selected exhibit. Now, if you're watching this and you're interested in using Streets of My Town in your work, then by all means get in touch with us. We're always up for a challenge. We'll help you scope out what your game could look like and what you can achieve with it. Just visit streetsofmytown.com and get your journey started.